So it's early spring here in Chicago. It's March 25th, and we have a few more weeks of cold weather before spring growth actually starts on these trees. So before that happens, I wanted to style this and get it in shape, because once it starts growing, it tends to get overgrown. It turns into like just a big bush, and then it's hard to find the branches. It's going to be a lot more work down the road than it is right now. So I want to refine these foliage pads, perhaps reshape some of these branches. We'll take a look when I bring this inside under better lighting, and I'll kind of do a time lapse and show you some of the theories that I'm working on with this tree and the final result that I have in mind. All right, so before I get started, I think it's important to zoom in and show you kind of a few of the things that I'm going to be keeping in mind as I'm styling this tree, some of the problem areas and what I'm going to do to solve it. And I'll probably even zoom in throughout this video to show you some of the detail work, which I kind of tend to not do in some of my videos. I just kind of style it in front of the camera like this. So let me zoom in and show you some of the areas I'm going to be working on. All right, so you can see a lot of the foliage is kind of getting away from the ends of the branches, and I want to push some of this foliage back to make the growth more compact. Perhaps we can get some back budding. And then, of course, some of these foliage pads are kind of growing into one another. So what I want to do is I want to shape it so we can have separate layers throughout the tree instead of it all just kind of coagulating together like that. Some of the wire on the apex has started to bite in, so I'm going to have to unwrap some of that wire today. I want to make the apex a little bit more narrow, and we kind of have a back branch over here that I feel like is drooping a little bit, so I'll try and bring this back, maybe wire it a little bit more horizontally. Here you can see another example where the foliage is kind of just getting away from the branch, so I want to push that in a little bit tighter. Then also with the profile, I feel like it's a little bit too rounded and bulky up here, so I really want to cut back the apex a little bit, shape it up a little bit more triangular. So that's it for right now. I'm going to go ahead and start styling the tree, and like I said, I'll zoom in on certain features to show you what I'm going to do. Okay, so the main objective today is going to be pushing those foliage pads back a bit towards the trunks. They don't grow outwards, all long and crazy. I want to keep the growth compact. And then the main thing I'm going to be doing is pruning out all of the foliage that's growing from the bottom and from the top of the foliage pads so that they're flat and look more refined. And I'm going to especially have to do that towards the apex, where it's just growing kind of crazy like a big mound. So a lot of refinement work. And what I want to mention right from the start is that I'm styling this in a feminine style. So sometimes you hear people say, okay, in bonsai there's a masculine style and a feminine style, and basically, to simplify that, the masculine style is kind of a more bulky look. They're potted in square pots or rectangular pots, whereas the feminine style is kind of a thinner trunk. It's lighter. You put it in a round or an oval pot, and that's kind of what I have to do with this juniper, styling it in a feminine style, because I bought it and the trunk was pretty thin. However, a lot of the foliage and branches are already refined on this tree. So, I could possibly grow a sacrifice branch, but it might throw things out of proportion. So I'm just going to style it with the thinness of the trunk that we have here. But to compensate for that, I have to remove a lot of foliage so that it doesn't look too bulky and heavy, where, the branch structure and the trunk can't really support the amount of foliage that is growing there. So not really a huge deal. And I know, especially for me, I tend to prefer having big, bulky trees. I feel like that looks impressive. However, if styled right, this juniper will look pretty good as well. It's just, a different style. So what I have to do is really get a lot of this foliage off the tree, push it back, keep it very compact and very sparse, because it's so easy for this to get overgrown. This is a juniper Procumbens, so it tends to be very vigorous and just grow in this mounding shape. So I really have to stay on top of it, and I'm going to have to keep pruning it multiple times this year to get a handle on that. And so I'm just going to have to do a little bit more refining work as the spring and summer goes on. All right, so at a certain point, I felt like I wasn't really making too much of an impact on this juniper. However, if you look at this before photo compared to the after photo, you can see I kind of thinned out a lot of the foliage, refined some of the foliage pads, thinned out the apex a little bit. However, I think the apex could still use a little bit more work. So going on into this growing season, I'm just going to try and stay on top of it, make sure it doesn't grow all crazy, and just push the refinement into a more finalized looking tree. All right, so here's what I ended up with, and it doesn't really look like a whole lot different, at least to me. However, when you look at the before and after photos, I did manage to get a significant amount of foliage off of this plant. Now the next step is going to be getting this into an oval pot that is lighter in color. I will probably do that within the next couple of months if I can ideally find that pot that suits this tree. Now, what I'm going to do moving forward is just some maintenance. So as the springtime comes and this starts growing, I'm going to have to be cutting back this foliage so that it doesn't grow out of shape and ruin all the work I just did. However, I feel like this trunk is still a bit thin for the amount of foliage that we have. So I think over the coming weeks, as it starts to bud back, ideally, I'll be able to reduce this even further, make it more narrow. Or what I may think about doing is wiring these branches to be a little bit more narrow, like I did with the spruce last week. And then hopefully that'll kind of balance out the thin trunk with the amount of foliage we have on this tree. But like I said, that's going to be it for now. I hope you enjoyed. You can hit that subscribe button down below to be notified when I make a new video. I've got a lot of trees in training that I'm going to be coming back and making videos about, and I will be making future videos about this juniper when I get that new pot, if I do decide to rewire these branches. But like I said, that's going to be it for right now.